Welcome back, everybody. We're going to be working on Unit 3 this evening, and we're going to start by doing a little bit of lecture material and talking about um, how we use Excel basically to organize our information, and then using some of the built-in functions to help accelerate our workflow and do some really powerful and cool things. Some of the functions that we'll look at, some of the major ones today, we're going to look at the if function, lookups, both vertical and horizontal, but VLOOKUP is generally the one most people use. And then this other function called COUNTIF and some kind of parent functions that go with that. Of course, as we kind of move along through the material, there's all these other little tips and tricks that kind of get filtered into the mix as we kind of work. And I'm going to try to make sure that you guys are aware of all the different ways to do things, but sometimes I forget some of those ways. So if I omit something and you guys know it and want to point it out, please feel free. But Excel is just so rich with little things that you can do. It's crazy, right? But at the same time, very, very useful. And it is very possible that you might know a couple little techniques that I don't, and vice versa. So that's why this is really fun. I do want to start by looking at this goofily titled article here, and I'm going to open this up. It is a PDF, so you can kind of download and grab this if you will. And I think what's kind of interesting about this is looking at some of the content here, and I'm noticing some of it also seems like it's a little bit cut off. Let me see if I can just extract it from the link. Or maybe I just download it and open it into Acrobat, where hopefully it'll come in a little bit cleaner. Still has a little problem there at the bottom, but whatever. We just have to deal with it at this point. All right. What you're going to figure out as you're going into this area, and especially now that it's kind of intertwining really heavily with AI, is there's lots of little catchphrases and big words that we throw around. And one of them in data analytics is this concept of big data. In the AI class that most of you are taking, we also have been talking about how big data is seen as kind of a disruptive technology, right? Because what's happening, and this is kind of exponential in its growth, really, and it's kind of mind-boggling in that regard, is that every couple of years, we're getting to the point that we're creating more data in those last couple of years than we have in all of human history prior to that time. And that trend has been continuing. I want you to just even ponder that for a second. Like, take a library, and then 2 years from now, we'll take all libraries of the whole planet, and our library has grown by that much. It is just astounding, right? And they kind of nail that here, right? 90% of the information in the world has been created in just the last 2 years. And this was in 2020. So since that time, yeah. So start doing the math on it. It's like, whoa, mind blown, right? I mean, this is pretty intense, right? So, why are these positions really that important? So we start using all this data to hopefully make good decisions, to drive computer programs and AI algorithms. But there is so much that is going on that we get overwhelmed by it, right? And just even conceptually, it's hard to grasp the volume. And the first thing I'm going to tell your brain, if you can, is to kind of let go of the notion that you're going to wrap your head around it. What you're going to do is you're more like the surfer who's riding a big wave. You're riding this big powerful force, and you're utilizing it to propel you forward, and you're not worried about what potential destruction it can do or whatever, right? So just kind of think of it in that regard. There's some tools that we are going to be looking at. So, like, for example, when we start looking at the information that's been generated recently. And the one really very high profile case is this guy here. Is everybody familiar with who Eric or Edward Snowden is? Right, who was recently acquitted, actually, I think, or pardoned, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but he's this guy that basically um, smuggled a bunch of government secrets out, right? Through various sources, um, and he released them, through a website called WikiLeaks. And I don't know if you guys remember that or not. It's kind of like a whistleblower kind of thing. Um, but what it showed and why it was so disturbing is how much information the US government is gathering on all of us, right? So that, okay, it's like, hey, we have all this data. That's great. Maybe we can figure out how to do things better and solve world hunger and disease and climate change and, pick a problem, we could solve it. But the other aspect is like, okay, but they're gathering data on us. Where are they getting the data from, first of all, right? And so, and what I always tell people is like, whenever you're using free online services, think of all your social media, your Googles, your Yahoos, your Apples, your Amazons, your whatever, all that stuff is information is being gathered on you and they profile you, right? Both for marketing to you and for figuring out if you're a bad person or a good person or a potentially bad person or whatever it is. And a lot of this is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? So I think this is one of the big concerns for the future is, okay, great, we're generating all this data. Do you really need to keep my data? That's one of the questions you should start asking, right? And so that's why this is kind of important. Now, granted, once again, this stuff is all a little bit dated at this point. They do start up with some of these companies here that we call big data startups, like Evolve, right? And notice what they do as a job. They sift through millions of pieces of human resources data from clients looking for insights about who applies for jobs and who succeeds at work. So depending on where you work, right, unless you're like mowing the lawn for cash or something like that, chances are your workplace is conglomerating information on you, whether you like it or not, right? And then think about this. If you work at a place where they're check processing, just your, like, how you get paid, like off of a time card, like we just did that exercise, that information gets transmitted to companies that do check processing, and that's in a database somewhere. And if the government asks for that information, well, they have to provide it, right? So your profiles are built, right? They know how much money you make, they know where you work, they know what hours you work, they know how far you're driving to work, yada, 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 yada. This is intensive kind of maybe obtrusive information gathering. There are a bunch of different ways they're gathering the information, and most of us scaringly willingly give up our personal information in exchange for a free video game or a cool social media account or whatever. So be mindful of that. There is no free when it comes to apps or software or website services. You are paying for it with your information. Some services do allow you to lock it down. There's a bunch of demographics that they gather. And I'll just kind of let you guys read through that. But the weird aspect of this is that we're moving into this era that this has become a really huge issue. When we are getting onto online services here, and this is really strange, but if just for example, if I just go to Google, okay, so Google's like my start page, whatever, and I'll go to type in a search, I don't get any warnings here saying, hey, look, you're signed into your account and everything that you search for is going into your profile. So you better not search for how to build an atomic bomb at home using parts from the hardware store, or how to build a bomb out of, Cheerios and milk or something, yeah, Laura, I was stretching there a little bit. But, the point is, right, that if I type in a weird search here, it's attached to my profile. And then when they're like, how many people have searched for how to build an atomic bomb buying stuff from the hardware store? And I'm going to come up on a list. And guess what? Right? Yeah. Then you get all this attention you don't want. Very interestingly, and I don't know if any of you guys use a VPN service. A lot of people are aware of what that is. But if I bring up my VPN service and go to the Google search engine over in a European Union country, I get a screen that comes up and says, hey, we're collecting information about you. Are you okay with this? And I'm not even signed in. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but this is starting to make inroads also here in the United States, most notably in California. So if you ever go to a website and you get one of those screens that comes up that talks about accept cookies, confirm your cookie choices, all that kind of stuff, that comes from the California privacy laws, because you don't have to allow people to collect information on you if you don't want it, right? You can turn that stuff off. In Europe, that's an automatic setting, by the way. And you get those screens that tell you that you can opt out and erase all your information. That's not available here in the United States, but I would anticipate that maybe someday we'll have that here as well. Usually Europe leads the way, California follows, and then maybe if we come to our senses, the whole country follows. But there are some deep concerns. A lot of the big companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, have all been busted and had to pay really big fines in Europe for taking people's information and using it for marketing purposes or selling it outright to governments, businesses, or whoever wants it and is willing to pay for it. So the wacky, weird world of data really refers to the fact that we are in an era where your information is for sale, and there's a lot of it. Okay, granted, like who cares what TikTok videos I'm watching? Well, somebody must, you know, that's for sure. All right, the next thing that I'm going to look at, and this is another, I think, pretty important article here, because this one is maybe a little bit more useful in terms of what we're doing here in class. I do want you to notice here that this is coming from Oracle, and Oracle is the company that has the big Oracle databases, created the Java programming language, the MySQL database, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, so they're very prominent in the world, and they also do a lot of cloud stuff. And you can see they are trying to sell me stuff here, right, as I'm looking at this article. But what they're kind of starting to point out is that we are dealing with these large volumes of information, and they're referring to this thing called data crunching, right, which is we get so much data, but what does that data look like? And then how do we process that data and use it to do stuff, right? So one of the things that is, you know, and I'll let you look at these first few bullets here, you know, so how do they refer to the initial data crunching refers to the initial key steps required to prepare large volumes of raw data for analysis. So just because you get like a data dump from a device or a database or whatever, it doesn't mean it's ready for analysis right off the bat. And that's one of the struggles that we have as data analysts, is you have all this info, but you know what, before I can do stuff with it, I got to kind of clean it up and organize it and sort it and, you know, order it or whatever. So they're saying that data crunching is often an essential step in preparing large amounts of data for analysis to do other things. We often strip out unwanted information and formatting, as well as cleaning and restructuring the data. So sometimes, think about this, if human beings are entering the data, sometimes it's not entered correctly. You ever have that happen to you? You go somewhere and they're like, okay, what's your name? And you type it in and it's wrong, right? And then you get a piece of mail with the wrong name on it forever, right? And then try to fix it, you know, that kind of thing. Automating the process can save companies time and money while making information more quickly available for analysis. Okay, that's true, provided that crunching happens in advance. And a lot of people call the crunching cleaning, you know, cleaning data, basically. Many programming languages and tools are used for data crunching, including R, Python, Java, MATLAB, and SAS, right? So they kind of go in here and they're talking about why do you crunch it? What are the benefits, right? So if you clean your data, it saves time, it saves money. If you have your data organized, you might get new customers or make your organization more efficient, right? These are kind of like big goals, but it can happen. If you look at your information and you notice where you can find an efficiency, absolutely. The steps that you do, right? And so as we kind of like get more into data analysis, these are often the things that you do. Sometimes you have a raw data feed, might be a dump from a device or a robot or whatever. Um, you convert that data into a format that makes sense. So for example, um, somebody may have input a date one way or you need it a different way. Um, and then you might need the data in a different format for further analysis or feeding into a different app. And that's all part of the process. Who does this? These are the kinds of people that do this. And I want you guys to notice that there's no listing here for data analyst, right? Because data analyst is actually kind of a new position. In the old days, we'd have these people, scientists, engineers, and architects, super high level, probably like master's level or PhD level kind of people. And an organization could probably only afford to hire one or two of those people, and everybody else is just kind of a peon, right? But what's happened is these high level people now have discovered they need lower level people to deal with all the data and do some of the data crunching for them, the cleaning, the sorting, the organizing, and then these guys will take it from there and do their high end analysis and prescriptive programming. Um, what services use this kind of information? We'll take a look. Marketing, finance, financial services, publishing, film, auto, oil and gas, and really anything that involves dealing with numbers, money, or whatever would use it. Languages that are built to process. Okay, so Python, most of you have taken the Python class already or are in the process of taking it right now. That's one of the most popular languages. R, which is an offshoot of Python, by the way, is a language that we teach in the data analytics program, right? It's built for doing data analysis. And then Java, another traditional language built for crunching data. And then you have these other tools, SAS and MATLAB. Interestingly, uh, MATLAB is often used as a plugin for Excel, and SAS is actually a standalone product. A lot of people that do statistical analysis use this product. And in the old days, this was about as employable as like Tableau or Power BI are these days. Really popular in the world of statisticians, right? Therefore, most people don't like to touch it. When you do get to any high level statistics course, right? So if you do like you go past stats one, you go to stats two or quantitative analysis or something like that, you usually end up working with both of these products because they're very heavily used in statistics. Um, you know, when you're working with data, here's some of the considerations that you make. And notice that, one of them is, what is this data for? Why are we using it? What's the point of all this? Are you looking at sales figures? We're looking at demographics. What is it? You always try to get your hands on the data as soon as possible so you have as much time to work on it as possible. And then you might have to generate a detailed report on the information, even though nobody might want to look at it, but you still do it, right? And then you do kind of, and I want you programmers to kind of like think about this terminology: input, processing, output. Remember, where have you heard that before, right? In just about every computer program that you write. But when you're dealing with data, it really is all the same thing. It's like, where's your input coming from? How are we processing that information? Why are we using it? What are we outputting it? For what purpose are we outputting it? Right? Because all that stuff is actually important. It is possible to automate a lot of this stuff. And this is what's kind of so neat about tools like Excel and having the internet at hand, basically, is because once we build like a good spreadsheet, it is possible, for example, to take a spreadsheet and feed live data into it on a real-time basis. That is totally a thing Excel can do. And if Excel is reading real-time data and then it changes your charts and graphs and line charts and reports dynamically with the live data coming in, it's like, oh my God, that's really cool, right? That's kind of where some of this stuff leads. All right, so that's kind of my lecture stuff for this evening. So the next thing that I want to do, and I'm not going to play all of these videos here, but we're going to talk about these functions. And if you guys click through on these, right, these take you to LinkedIn learning videos. And I'm just going to click on the first one, and I'm just going to show you that it takes you to this video series here. I'm going to just pause the video and go to this mode. But if you look at this section of this video course, they talk about if functions and relational operators, how VLOOKUP works, both on a general and specific basis, and then COUNTIF, and then they show average if as well. Now, what my goal would be here is I want to just kind of demonstrate a little bit of how this stuff works. And I think it might be helpful, at least for some of this, to watch little snippets of this. I really don't want to go through all the videos because you can see some of them get pretty long. But I'll show you just basically the fundamental principles of how to work with this stuff. Then what we'll do is we'll switch over to applying this to the exercises that we have, right? So these are the 3 links. These all take you to the same video series. And then we'll use that to try to build these exercises. We're at about the halfway point right now, so I am going to pause for a little bit. And we're going to pause the video here as well. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll return and carry on. So 5-minute break, folks. All right, we're back from break, and we're going to start looking at a couple of the concepts here. And actually, I was going to dive right into working on this spreadsheet here, but I thought what might be a little bit more useful is I did go through and I noticed that this is kind of like cleaning stuff up here, that these 3 links, so the if, VLOOKUP, and COUNTIF, these all take you to LinkedIn learning videos if you click the titles. What I also did to kind of follow suit here, there's some information from Microsoft directly on how these functions work in Excel. And they have these super short little videos on each one of these. So I thought what might be kind of helpful. And I just want to kind of point out the fact that because this is a Microsoft product, there is a super, super rich set of information on Microsoft's website. So if you're ever working with something, you're like, hey, what does this weird formula do? Just go to the Microsoft website and search it, and you will find it. This is on their support site, by the way. And here, let's just kind of read up on this. It says, the if function is one of the most popular functions in Excel, and allows you to make logical comparisons between a value and what you expect. So an if statement can have 2 results, right? Okay, programmers, you know what these are. One is if your comparison is true. Second, if your comparison is false. So for example, if C2 equals yes, 1, 2 says if C2 equals yes, then return a 1, otherwise return a 2. That's what it's really saying. So that's the basic formula, and I'll explain how that works, but let's just watch a super quick little video here.
Use the if function in Excel to compare text or values in a cell to what you are expecting. Select a cell, type equals if, and add the condition to test. In this case, we are seeing if actual is greater than budgeted. Add an if true value and an if false value. Press enter. Select the cell and drag to apply the if to other rows. That's it.
Okay, so that's a very, very simplistic example, but I do like that it's like so quick, right? So here's going to be my kind of like mini version of this. So I have basically these columns pre-created here. And what I'm looking to do is take a product, and I just have some shoes. I don't know what shoes they are. And they have a manufacturer suggested retail price of 99 bucks. However, they're available right now through whatever business at a little bit cheaper. So I'm assuming they're on sale. So I'd like to write an if statement here to determine, are these products on sale or are they not on sale? Right. So here's how I'd do that. I would type if, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually, here, I'm going to blow that away. I'm going to be smart. I'm going to do what the guy in the LinkedIn videos does, is he makes the cell a little bit bigger before he begins, and he like zooms way the heck in, so it's easier to read. But I'm going to type if, and you'll notice as I type the formula name, there's a quick list of other formulas that pop up here that start with the same letters, right? Once I hit the parentheses, it gives me, and I know this is probably hard for you guys to read, but it tells me the format of the command. So there's three attributes or excuse me, parameters that we're going to feed in here. The first one is the logical test. So how do I know something's on sale? Because its cost or sell price, maybe that I should call it that, is less than the MSRP, right? So if this is less than this, okay, so that's the truth we're testing. It's either true or false. Then what's the value that I'm going to put in this cell if it's true? And so I might say something like on sale. Or what would be the other value? Well, not on sale, right? Or how about I just say regular price, right? And you'll notice I'm not dropping numbers in here, but it could be numbers too, right? In this case, we're dropping in whether it's on sale or it's at regular price. Okay, so I'm going to press enter. And of course, this one is less than, so it's on sale. I can drag that formula down, right? And so the game console is regular price, the milk's on sale, and the tools are on sale. And then if I came up with another product, give me another product here. How about, okay, gaming laptop, how about that? Right, and that's going to be a lot more expensive. That's going to be, I don't know, $1,348, right? That's the MSRP, and it's not on sale. It's got the new NVIDIA card on it, so they're not discounting it. So it's regular price. Right. But you notice how that's really helpful. Now, it could be dropping in text. It could be dropping in numbers, right? It can drop in whatever is useful, right? All right. So that's how the if formula works. Let's move on now to the VLOOKUP. So I'm going to go back here to our course, and I have that brought up here too. This is also from the Microsoft perspective. Use VLOOKUP when you find things in a table or range by row. So for example, if you look up the price of an automotive part by the part number, or find an employee name based on their employee ID. Okay, so I kind of do that with you guys, right? So look, if I'm looking up your ID, then your name comes up, right? So it's being looked up, so that's kind of a good way to think of it. So in its simplest form, right? So the parameters for VLOOKUP are what you want to look up first, where you want to look for it. So usually it's going to be a range of cells, the column number in the range containing the value to return. So it might be several columns. One of them is the thing you're looking up, and the other column is the thing that has the info that you want. That's very common. And then either you're going to return an exact match or an approximate match, and you indicate that with a true or a false, a 1 or a 0. So you can say true or false or 1 or 0, same difference. So let's just do a really quick little video watch of
Use the
this.
VLOOKUP function in Excel to quickly find information in a table range or large spreadsheet. For this example, we're looking at the budgeted cost of airfare. Select a cell. Type =, VLOOKUP, left parenthesis, and select the value to look up. Type a comma, and select the range or table to look for the value. Type a comma, and the number of the column where the lookup value is located. Type a comma. false, write parentheses to find the exact value. Press enter.
Once again, a very, very simplistic example, but powerful nonetheless, right? So the thinking here is basically when you have information that's organized, you can look up a value in a table and associate it with a piece of information. And sometimes we're looking for an exact match. So in that case, they were looking for something that said airfare and they knew what the exact price was. Sometimes you don't need an exact match, you actually need a range. And this is one of the examples that the LinkedIn video does, by the way. So like what I did is I created this separate little table here, and I put it on the sheet so you could see it. But for all I know, it could be on a separate tab in a spreadsheet or a different spreadsheet, right, where the information is stored. But basically what this table is like if somebody's ordering my products online, could be any one of these products, right? If the order amount is under $100, the shipping cost is 10%. If it's between 100 and let's say 499, it'll be 5%. If it's from 500 up to 999, then it's going to be 2%. If it's 1,000 or over, the shipping is free. Okay. And is this a real world scenario? Absolutely not. I'm just inventing it just for the sake of using VLOOKUP so you can see how it works. So in this case, I want you to think about what's happening here. I'm not going to be looking for an exact match in the table. What I'm going to be looking for is a range of values. So an approximate match, right? It just the data fits. The one thing that I will tell you is when you're doing this kind of a lookup and it's a numeric one and it fits in a range and we're not getting an exact match, that the data needs to be in order. So the lookup column needs to be ordered in the way that we need it to be, right? And so if I change the order, that can mess things up. So what I'm trying to figure out here is what is that shipping amount that we're going to put in there. All right, so here we'll start by typing VLOOKUP. Oops, and I did not mean to press enter yet. Let's do that again. So VLOOKUP. And then the first thing that we need to enter is the lookup value. So in other words, what is the thing we're looking up? Well, I'm going to look at the cost, right? That's the thing I'm looking up is the cost. All right. Then notice how the highlight changes here. I'm going to look up the table array where I might find the information to look it up. Okay. So what I'm going to enter here is this whole range of values. Notice I'm selecting both columns because I need to look at the dollar amount range, and I also need to look at the shipping cost percentage. Okay. Another comma. Now I'm looking at the column index number where the value that I want brought back is located. This is the first column. This is the second column. So what I type here is 2. I want the information from the second column. And then finally, what am I looking up? In this case, I'm going to do a range lookup. So I'm going to type true. In the other example that we just saw in the video, they put in false because they needed an exact match, right? And you see how it's labeled, exact match, approximate match. So I'm just going to click that. And then I'm going to close my parentheses and press enter. All right, so I'm going to spread this out and just click in here so you can see the formula. So VLOOKUP, we're looking up this cell in this range, J4 to K7, J4 to K7. We're looking at the second column. That's the one we want to pull back. And we need a range, so we type true. Right, so I'm pressing enter again, and it's pulling back 10%. So it's $80 less than or equal to 100? Yes. So is 10% the right shipping amount? Yes. Okay, I can calculate the total now too. So I can say equals this plus the shipping, and that's the total with the shipping. All right. But it's returning, hold on a second. It's returning 10. Is that really what I want it to do? So it's returning that value. Okay, so this is where I'll have you think about this. And so it's returning the lookup value, but it's not actually doing the calculation, is it? So are we maybe misnaming this? Should this be shipping rate? That's what it really should be. All right, so just have you think about that. All right, so then that's wrong. So let's insert another column here, and let's say shipping cost. And then we can take this value and multiply it by that one. So we can say equals okay. Now, that's not really truncated very nicely. These are really percentages. This is really a dollar amount, right? Notice how it rounded. Interesting. And then the total would be the cost plus the shipping, and we would place it here. Why did it round up to $8? Because it's 7.999999 repeating. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question. It's a scaling issue, technically. All right, I'm going to take that lookup now, and I can move it down. But wait a second, it broke already. All right, why? Let's look at the formula that goes in here. Once again, I'm going to expand this so you can see the whole formula. And this range is true, but if I copy the formula down, it's going to switch it. It's going to say K5, L8, K6, L9, right? So that's one of those where I have to press the F4 and put the dollar signs in there. All right, and then lock it in. Then I should be able to drag it down, and it should give me the right shipping percentages or shipping rates right there. The shipping cost, is that something that I can copy down? I sure can, so I can just pull that down. And the total also. Right, that one didn't fit, but there you go. So we got the if function, and we have the VLOOKUP. All right, let's take a look at COUNTIF really quick. I have that one pulled up here. So use COUNTIF, one of the statistical functions, to count the number of cells that meet a criterion. For example, to count the number of times a particular city appears in a customer list, right? In its simplest form, COUNTIF says, where do you want to look? What do you want to look for, right? And so we're going to look in a range. We're going to look for the word London, or we're looking for what's in A4. You know, that's kind of an example. Let's just take a really quick look at this one.
Use the COUNTIF function to count the number of cells that meet criteria you specify, such as the number of times a name shows up within a range of cells. To use a formula with COUNTIF, select an empty cell, type the equals sign, and type COUNTIF into the cell, followed by an opening parenthesis. The COUNTIF function has two arguments, range and criteria. Let's start with range. Select a range of cells, type a comma to advance to the next argument, which is the criteria to look for. Type a quotation mark, and then the name Buchanan as the search criteria. End with another quotation mark. Type a closing parenthesis and press Enter. Buchanan's name appears 7 times within the selected range. To change the arguments of the function, you don't need to retype it. Select the formula bar and replace Buchanan's name with another salesperson.
All right. Once again, a very simplistic example. But what I like about it is that they just get to it and point out how it works, right? And then you can kind of leverage it. Now, I'm looking, I don't really have a good example here to throw in the mix. However, right, I could add like maybe another game console, right? And maybe this one's 899, no discounts on that. But you notice what happened there? The moment I typed in both the prices, it told me if it was regular price, the shipping rate, the shipping cost, and the total with shipping, right? Because my formulas all followed. I didn't even drag the formulas into these cells here. Excel assumed I was following the pattern and auto completed it for me. Thank you, Excel. Right? That's very powerful, by the way. You know, if you're like doing like repetitive entry like that. But now I could demonstrate the COUNTIF function. So for example, I can say COUNTIF, right? And then we're looking at a range. I'm going to do the same thing they did, right? So we're looking at that. And then I'm just looking for game console. Close my parentheses, press enter, and there's 2. Right, so this is, once again, a very simplistic example, but it also can be super, super useful. Of course, I'm not labeling the output or anything like that, but just showing you how the formula works. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop this or pause this video here for just a moment to see if there's any. All right, so what we're going to do next here is we are going to work, or at least begin to work on this spreadsheet here and try to figure out what stuff we need to do and how we're going to use some of the functions that we have provided to solve this spreadsheet. I'm going to go ahead and click on the assignment title here to kind of get us rolling. And we do want to start by downloading the spreadsheet. I do also want to point out the fact that there is a PDF attached here as well, and I suggest that you open that and take a look at it. And what this does is it also details these functions somewhat, right? So they talk about how the if function works, right? We also talk about a couple of extra little things. So we're going to learn about concatenation and proper functions, which we have not put into place yet, but we'll kind of tinker with those. But basically what these two do, okay, so programmers should know this term, right? So like if you've done any programming, which you ideally should have prior to this this class, or maybe while you're doing this class, concatenation is basically the process of taking text information. So, and names are a perfect example. Concatenate in programming means to join text together. That's what it formally means. So what we're trying to do here is take this information, which looks like it's coming from a primitive database entry. It's all caps, first names in one column, last names in another. And to concatenate them, we would drop them in here joined together. But notice that they're also in what we call capitalization form. So in other words, all the caps are gone, but the first letter of the first name and the first letter of the last name are in proper English format, right? And so, you know, notice how that like kind of leads to the function name. So concatenate is a function that joins the two cells together and makes it one cell. Proper is a function that switches the uppercase formatting to what we call title case, where the first letter is capital and the rest of the letters are lowercase. So it's two functions acting on the same cell. So this is kind of part of the exercise because the information is provided that way. Reiterates the VLOOKUP functions. And notice that they'll be used to calculate the taxes for employees and also the retirement amount as well. All right, let's go take a look at the spreadsheet now. I have it downloaded, so you should go ahead, download it as well. I'm going to go ahead and open the original version. It should pop up in Excel here in a moment. There it is. This comes from the outside world, so I am going to enable editing, right? And one thing, I guess we haven't really talked about that, but the interesting aspect of that is when you do get files from the outside world, why do they have them locked from being edited? The answer, by the way, is Excel files, aside from the fact that we can put formulas and data and stuff into our Excel files, Excel also has the capability to include small pieces of programming code called macros. And that code, although it's unusual, can sometimes be utilized to launch viruses and malicious attacks, by the way. So whenever you're getting a file from a source you don't trust, I would virus scan it. Yes, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint files can all have payloads, unfortunately. It's not very common these days, but there was a time when I was first working in IT, that was a very typical kind of attack, actually. Most people had no clue. And on top of it, Word and Excel wouldn't stop the file from executing. The moment you opened it, you were kind of done for, right? Pretty sneaky, actually. The modern versions of Excel and Word, if you pull in a file from the internet, a downloaded file, it always puts up that little box. But if you want to change the sheet, of course, you got to click past it. Otherwise, you'll never be changing anything. All right, let's take a look at the information on the spreadsheet first. So this is kind of like one of those like goofy things that you're going to start to learn to do as a data analyst. Because most people would look at this and go, okay, I'm done looking at it. Take me out of here, right? Let's be real frank. That's how a lot of people think. Okay. The other thing that I want you to be very keenly aware of is that we also have two tabs here. Okay. Wait a second. I have never done a spreadsheet with two tabs, right? Is the first thing we're going to say. So like the thing that's kind of weird about spreadsheets is, for example, if I wanted to have a bunch more tabs in the spreadsheet, you can do that. Now you saw that like in the spreadsheet that I showed you from the things I do at work, you guys noticed that, man, you had like 20 or 30 tabs in there. I'm like, yep, yeah, sometimes spreadsheets get like that. And it's a strange setup that Excel, because you think of Excel as having like rows and columns, and they can keep you like a ton of rows and a ton of columns and a ton of data in there. And then you go, that's the first tab. Now there's another tab and another tab and another tab and another tab. And as I sometimes do in our AI class, I'm not sure who always looks that up. Noah, I think Noah is the one who always looks that up. Or Chris, is that you? How many tabs can I have in an Excel spreadsheet? And the answer is like, it's huge. I don't know what the limit is, but it's huge, right? But we can, if we're in the same spreadsheet and I have multiple tabs, we can have a bunch of different information. Now you notice this is the payroll like conglomeration, and we're looking at very particular individuals who happen to be employees in this organization. You notice there's 102 employees in this organization, and notice what information that we have. So we have their ID, first name, last name, their phone, department, the hire date, street, address, city, state, zip, home phone, yada, 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 yada. I'm noticing that some of this stuff is truncated, right? Right, so I'm expanding the columns. The easy way to do all of them, of course, is to highlight using the top left item and then double click, and they all auto size. Okay. So couple aspects here. So if you're picking up on, well, let's look at the instructions again, because now maybe after looking at the information a little bit, the instructions might make a little bit more sense. So it says here, okay, use a spreadsheet as a start point. You follow directions in the Excel functions document your completed spreadsheet. Okay, so in other words, you have to go here to get the instructions, right? So it says, the if function's a logical things. Council members are only allowed up to 4 terms. Okay. Use the if function to determine if a member is ready to retire. Okay. Do we have that information present right now? So can I just look here and go, oh, okay. Yeah, I do have that information here. So in other words, what they're trying to tell us is that these people sit on the Aspen Falls City Council, and they're counting the number of terms they've served on the council, and there's a limit. Okay, so the limit seems to be 4 terms. So it says, use the if function to determine if a member is ready to retire. Okay, so what's our criteria? All right, so here's what I'm going to do here, kind of like the LinkedIn video guy does. I'm going to zoom in and make it much bigger so we can type the formula easily. So I'm going to say if, open parentheses. Okay, what's our logical test? If the terms, so what would indicate that they're ready to retire? The terms equals 4. Okay, so we got to talk about this for a second, because that would be my first instinct, is to say, if terms equals 4, they're ready to retire. Or should I say greater than or equal to 4? I don't know. Does anybody have an argument one way or the other?
I would say greater than or equal to 4, because there might be a sneaky one that did 5, or there's a typo.
Or maybe they couldn't find somebody to fill that person's spot, so they let them go another term, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody wants to be in charge of Parks and Rec or something like something goofy like that, or garbage, right? Okay, so yeah, that's kind of my inclination. So if that one is greater than or equal to 4, that's our logical test. Okay. All right, so what's the value if true? Well, it's either going to be yes or no, right? So if it's true, I'm going to say yes, or I'm going to do it with a capital Y. And if it's false, we'll say no. All right. So this person's only done 3, so their formula works. Okay, so once again, there's the formula. And I'm going to copy that down. And then I'm going to resize my column. So are they ready to retire? Well, looks like Maria's ready to retire. Okay, so that was step 1. All right, so just to kind of reiterate what we just said here, is I went to the Microsoft website, I looked up the concatenate function so I could see the verbiage of how it works. And basically the way it works is you say concatenate, you indicate what text or cell, right? What text or cell you want joined, right? And then to do the proper function, the syntax is basically whatever text you have is inside the parentheses. So that could be potentially replaced with the concatenate function. So that's what I'm going to try to do, but we're going to do them one step at a time. Okay, so back over to the spreadsheet. We're going to the employees tab, and you'll notice here column M is already set up for us to do a concatenate. I'm zooming way in so it's easier to see. And basically what we're trying to do here, once again, is we're trying to take these 2 fields and concatenate them, or join them as text together. All right, so that's going to go here. And maybe I got to zoom out, like one more click there. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to just say equals, and I'm going to just start typing spelled correctly, right? So that's not like a really easy word to spell. In fact, I always have to think about it when I spell it out, but I see it on the list. I'm arrowing down and I'm pressing enter. And of course, it didn't take it. All right, concatenate, double click. There we go. All right, so what text am I joining first? Well, I want the first name, comma, and the last name. Let's close the parentheses and see if that works. Yeah, it worked. All right, so this is kind of like programming. You guys picking up on this? Oh, if you want a space in there, you got to add that to the formula. This is kind of the catch. Right, so I'm going to click back in here. And so in between here, I'm going to put in an empty space, just like I would in programming, like double quotes, empty space, double quote, another comma. All right, let's press enter. Okay, better. Correct. Now, can I do the experiment that I thought I could do? Could I wrap this with a proper function and have it work? Let's try, right? So, and there's no harm done in trying. So I'm going to type proper, and notice how it's coming up there. Okay, once again, I pressed enter, and I got to stop that habit. Right, so some programs allow you to do that. Right, open parenthesis. And actually, I put one too many parentheses in there. Close the parenthesis, pressing enter, and there you go. Okay, so I'm going to click back in here so you can see the full formula. And of course, it doesn't fit. So let's make it a little wider. Slide over just a little bit, and let's try that again. Once again. There we go. So this is the whole syntax of it, right? We're doing the concatenation first. Right, so it's B2, comma, space, C2, right? Joining that, so first name, last name with the space in between. And then that all goes inside the parentheses of the proper function, and it converts it to title case, like that. Now here's where the power of this is really, really amazing. All right, so I'm going to zoom out just a click, right? Because I have how many names here? 102 names, right? We already know that, yeah, I can take this and I can drag, right? And notice how it did all of them beautifully, right? Control Z, right? You're like, why would you Control Z that? Well, I want to drag it all the way down, but I want you to watch what happens. When you get there, you have to keep dragging like this. And you see it's a little bit slower. You can make it go a little bit faster, but then sometimes you go way too fast, right? And it'll kind of do it. Okay, once again, Control Z. That's not so bad. It's only 100 names. Fathom this, though. What if it's 10,000? You want to click and hold and drag for 10,000? No. So how do you do that? Double click the little box, and it did the whole list. Doesn't matter how long it is. Now think about the power of what I just did. Like if I would have had to go through and retype these together in one box in title case, oh my God, right? It's very, very time consuming. Yeah, it really is. But that trick where I get the one formula correct, right? Here's the formula again, right up here. And then I just double click that little box and it does the whole list. And keep in mind, if it was 10,000 names, it would have done all of them. And this is the kind of goofy little stuff that spreadsheet people know how to do. And other people's watch and go, how'd you do that? All right, so we managed now to complete a couple of the tasks in the homework, right? So we did number 1 and number 2, and next is the VLOOKUP. That we're going to save for next week. But what I would like you to try to do is use the references I provided, the Microsoft ones, the example I did in my video, which I'll post tomorrow, and the one on LinkedIn, and then wrestle a little bit with VLOOKUP and figure out how it works. And whether you get it right or wrong or not, just remember that when we come back next week, we'll go through it and review how to make it work correctly. So this video will end here, unfortunately, because it is 7:30. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop button. But now you do have a head start on your homework.